Hi, my name is Todd Lamley, and welcome to Firepower Threat Defense. And in this section, we're going to cover or continue configuring the Firepower Management Center. And in this section, we're going to configure on the FMC something called the system configuration. So before we get started on this, I want to go through and talk about the tasks for installing it so far. Well, the first thing we did was install the FMC, and in this case we did a virtual FMC, didn't we? And it was pretty simple. With the hardware ones are just as easy. And then secondly, we configured or installed the license, and we used a smart license for this, and got a token and downloaded and put that in. So we needed the token, even though we were using a demo, we needed a token for exportable items such as remote access, AnyConnect, and so on. And now where we're at is here, and we want to then start configuring the FMC with something called the system configuration. And it's just somewhat of a long section, isn't it? We're going to, or you'll find out that it is, we're going to do things like SNMP and syslog and time, everything for the FMC. It has nothing to do with our FTDs. These used to be configured together. The system configuration used to configure the FMC and the appliances or ASA with Firepower, but we don't do that anymore. They're separated, and the FTD uses something called a platform settings, which we'll obviously cover much later in this series. Settings, oops. So that gives me my system configuration for my FTD boxes or appliances. And then next, what we'll do is do the health policy and something called the health alerts. Right now, we could easily bring in our boxes here, FTD boxes, into the FMC. As soon as we have a license, you have to have. Now, I can take ASA with Firepower appliance, bring them in using the classic license without having the actual license on the FMC. I couldn't push policy because that's when the license is enforced. But when we have FTD, you have to have your smart license already installed before you can bring it in. Okay, so after this, then I like to come down here and do it here. Bring in my FTD, right? Whatever my device is, just FTD or any device, right? And at that point, I have my FMC configured with licensing, system configuration, and health policy. And now I can just start working on policy. But right now, we're going to be right here. So we'll go ahead and take a look. So again, we've installed the FMC, we've done the system licenses, the smart licenses where we're at. So we're all registered, we're looking good. And now we're going to come over here and continue on. This is configuring in my FMC over here, right? If I come over here, this is analysis of my policies, where I can configure my policies, where I add my devices and configure my devices such as interfaces, routing, NAT, and so on. So let's go ahead and now go to system config and do a more detailed configuration of the FMC. Okay, so first off, we have access list up here. So we'll just kind of go from top to bottom, although some things have to be done in a particular order, not in this order. And kind of odd, they're not necessarily in alphabetical order, are they? A little bit, but not completely. In the access list, this says who can get into my FMC or into the FMC. And we only list it on ports 443 and 22. So in this case, be careful though, because if you were to come in here and say, I want to add a rule and I'm going to add only this guy can come in through HTTPS to him and to SSH, and then that guy doesn't exist, or you can't get in, you're locked out of your FMC. You might reinstall. You can call Cisco and they go through the FMC GUI and take that out. That's sad, I know that. But just be careful here on this access list. It is access hardening it, right, per se, who can get in. In this case, we're saying anyone. And we maybe want to add some internal IT VLANs. Now, on the process here, I don't really use this for my virtual FMCs, but for the hardware virtual FMCs, I do. I can shut them down. Can't turn them back on from here. Reboot, restart. You can do that from here, but if I'm going to do something like this, I'm usually doing it from my vCenter, but you have that option. Now, on the audit log, extremely important. I really encourage you to use this. So if I come over here to System Monitoring Audit, this is my syslog of my FMC. So this is going to tell me, what's been happening. You can see here I am. I did my licensing. Now I'm doing my configuration. All right, and whatever I was doing. Now, one of the things that I had problems with at a customer is they would go make changes, would screw it up, they'd call me and blame me, or just in general it would be bad. And then I'd go down there and you can see that they can delete them. Now it might show that they were deleted up here, kind of, but the point is that we really need to get this off of here. And the way to do that is to go here to the audit right here, enable this, and the host is 10, and we're going to do like a secure syslog, right? Now this isn't a syslog class. There's a lot to syslog. There really is. I'm going to do system, syslog, and info. The tag is vendor information, my FMC20. We can send it to an HTTP server. But in this case here, I have to hit save on every page on here, and it immediately takes effect. I don't have to deploy it or anything like that. The minute I change a page in the system config and say save, then it's all set. Okay. Now the login banner is your typical, customer login banner or your company login banner. This is Acme. Here I already put one in there. This is FMC20. Only Todd is authorized, right? Something you just copy paste that in there. Nothing exciting here, but we definitely need one. Change reconciliation allows us to see what's happened in a particular window of time. Now, this is different than saying, hey, run this, and I wish it was like this. I could turn this on. I don't have my relay yet, so I can't set this up, but I can enable this, and it would be nice to say, I want to run this at 8 o'clock every morning when I come in and see what's happened in the last 24 hours. It kind of doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Basically, this says run every 8 hours, or I could say run every 23 hours and 50 minutes. That's the most I can do. So I'm going to lose 10 minutes a day. Show full change history, policy config, whatever we want to do. If we want to leave that in there, that's fine. So we could set up a relay host to send that. The reports aren't that great in the sense of being informative, but they are there for records. A lot of my bank customers use them. If you have an appliance DNS cache dashboard, these kind of have outlived their purposefulness. They're kind of old. But if you have an appliance, maybe you'd still use those. Under database, take a look here. I don't recommend making a lot of changes here, if any at all. You really got to understand what these are. Maybe you have Cisco support on the phone, something like that. But if I was to create policy and then do analysis, and I do analysis connection events, that is, and if you guys remember from the introduction when I went through that FTD flow, and I talked about policy, the access control policy being our main policy. These are the logs of what's hit on a rule in the access control policy. So what we're saying right here in the connection database is we can only have 1 million events, right? That's the default, 1 million events, right? 1 million stored events, right? Or intrusion events. So if I said analysis intrusion events, it's my IPS stored events, and then this would be like my file malware. But the point is 1 million events for my access control policy rules is very little. Most people use that a few seconds or maybe a few minutes, something like that. Now, you can change this and up to on a virtual FMC. I have something open on my blog up here I was looking at, but if I come up here with my blog, I'd say how to make your virtual FMC faster. And one of the things is I can get this to 49 million events on a virtual FMC if configured correctly. If you have like a 4500, which costs a lot of money, you get like 250 million events. 1 million is just not very many. We could easily do 10 million without a problem. I really wouldn't suggest changing most of these other stuff. Now, no changes take effect until you hit save on each page. The next one we'll do is email notification. Set up our relay. This is kind of important. Everything's important. And I'm going to use smtp.gmail.com. I don't recommend using that for work, right? But in this case, this should work for me. The from address, I'm going to just make up, and that's fine. And but I can't make this up. And password, and then test. Now I got to send it to a real address as well. And maybe they'll come back. I'm going to leave this right now, and I can play with this later. I will get this working, but I just want to have this configured for right now. And it doesn't mean it's not working always. maybe I made a mistake, but I'm not going to play with it anymore now. Now, in this case here, there's something else here called access control preferences. This is the access control policy, our main policy. We also have something down here, intrusion policy preferences, and NAP, or it's really our advanced or our preprocessors. Right now, what this says is if you're making changes to these policies, that the person making the change when they hit save cannot save their changes until they put a comment on what they did. Now, they might not type anything useful, but it'll still record their name, date, and time. And that's what's important. Now, I don't have these on. I'm disabling these. You should turn these on. You'll see that the NAP and the intrusion policy here, they're set to optional, right? So which means that they can just cancel out of that. Now, as you're, say, in class in this instance, we're, say, kind of in a class here, or you're cutting over someone. I made some mistakes of turning these on before, a big cutover, and boy, that was horrible. So I came in and turned those off for a week or so. Once that cutover's done, then we want to go and turn those back on. You can create a certificate for your FMC, kind of maybe recommend that. So when you come in, you don't get a not secure up here, right? That's what this is. You could actually have one from the client as well, but this is a little bit harder to set up, so be careful. You could lock yourself out. The other thing, we have 4 languages now. You can easily change them. Change those on your friend. It'd be fun. Now, actually, it's 5 languages now. They keep adding to this. So if I came over here and it was Friday night at 5 and I was going on vacation, and I said, let me just make this Chinese. It's all Chinese. So, because this would be fun for your friends. This would be a laugh ride, I think. It could be your last day at work, but you'd have to figure out how to get back in here, right? I don't know. It could be fun, but careful. Okay, so we'll set that back. Easy to change. All right, now the other thing that we're going to come down here is the management interfaces. We don't change everything on here, but quite a bit of stuff. What's nice about here, I don't really change anything. You can see that I'm talking from my FTD box, or I say with Firepower, whatever it is, to my FMC using TCP 8305. Now, I bring this up because I was at a client, and they happen to have a Palo Alto, boo hiss, between the FTD boxes somehow and the FMC. I'm like, really? Anyways, and what is that? What did that Palo Alto block? Well, TCP 8305, probably on purpose. So anyways, we had to figure that one out. So I'm just telling you, keep this in mind just in case. I can change, if I made a mistake here, the host name, fully qualified name, domain. These are really important here, right? How they're used. Remote storage, we will absolutely use. You absolutely need to use this. When you use this is for when you come over here, later on we're going to do task management with scheduling and backups. Now, the backups of the FMC should be done every day, hopefully. It kind of depends on your network, but for the most part. And we want to back those up on the FMC. But I get a lot of people that, I've had people go out there and someone has deleted their on their vCenter, their FMC. And they call me and say, someone deleted our FMC, right? And I was like, well, I set you guys up with backups here. Like, yeah, well, we lost that connection or whatever, so they didn't have it. So you guys really want these remote, because if someone deletes your FMC or gets corrupted something, your backups are on your FMC, So we're going to back them up at NFS, SMB, SSH. SMB is version 1. We probably don't use that much. I use NFS or SSH at my customers, and we'll do that when we get to the task management section of this program. SNMP is something else I definitely will set up to be able to send SNMP traps from my FMC. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use only version 2 in this class. Version 3 is just too hard. Should you use version 3 at work? Sure, but I don't know too many people that do. They try to set it up and then it becomes very difficult. But nonetheless, we can configure that. Now that this is done, hold on a second. Now that that's done, I just chose the version in the community string. And if I was version 3, it would ask me a lot more users and so on. But I'm going to come back here to access list. If you don't configure this part, SNMP traps will not work, right? You're going to say, I configured it. Call Cisco and go, well, you need to add that into your access list right there, right? And you got to say who your NMS manager, network management station, listed on port 161. I can't change that here. So nonetheless, I'm going to save that. So that's part 2 of SNMP. We'll get to part 3 in the next video, actually. And so we got SNMP shell timeout. Now, the browser doesn't time out for 60 minutes. That's quite, that's like no activity. That's a long time. And the shell to the FMC never times out. You might want to change these. As a matter of fact, I'm going to raise this. So while I'm teaching class, this doesn't time out on me. I don't think I would set that to 10 hours like I just did, but for a non-production environment, sure, why not? Now the time doesn't do anything. Time synchronization does though, and this is what I set when I think I did this when we logged in here, right? When we came up and we got that screen that asked us to fill everything out. I must not have. Oh no, here it is. So it's enabled and it's already set. Pool.ntp.org. I did that when we came into the FMC for the first time. You didn't have to do it. You could do it from here or change it from here. All right, this is pretty much. Now they have some web analytics that you can send. This is new with 623. I don't really use most of the other stuff here. Maybe use a REST API, but share usage information with Cisco. That's kind of new. All right, that is our system configuration.